This is just a quick look at the rigs that you'll get to use while creating your walk cycles. Now, it's important to first note that these rigs were designed by Mateus, by Andy, and by Juan Pablo. And these were obtained via the Cloud Blender site. It's an amazing resource and well worth your time if you're interested in these sorts of things. So when you do create your walk cycle, if you want to show it off as part of a folio, it's a good practice and a good idea to acknowledge the people who actually built and designed this rig. So what you're looking at in terms of this rig is a really awesome complex rig that allows you to do many cool things. This is the production version. You can animate this and you can make this, you can render these out and you can get some really beautiful results. So here's the fully textured look. And if I select our rig and I go into pose mode, so you might have it initially in object mode, select the rig, choose pose mode, and now you'll be able to select all of the different components and move this rig around. So for example, I've selected the hip and I can move this around. I can select different objects, and it's worth your time again going through and discovering what each one of these different objects does, and spend some time understanding this rig and all the different things that it can do, because it's a really powerful rig that allows you to do some really cool things. Again, it will take you a while to really get used to this rig and finding out what each little different thing does. But you'll notice that the setup initially is all in inverse kinematics for the hand. So again, inverse kinematics drives the movements by an end effector child. So as we move the end effector, the child drives the motion of the parents. And so this is an inverse kinematic setup. Now, if you load the gaming rig, you'll notice that the rig is quite different in terms of how it's presented and what you can see. The production rig has a lot of control items. You don't see any of the bones. All you see are controllers, and you can select these and you move these controls around. The gaming rig has the bones that do the movement and absolutely no controllers. This is not necessarily vital, but it is the way that this rig will work because of the way that we've chosen to solve how we import it into a game engine. So when you export an animation, the bones themselves need to be animated. And so you have to actually create the animation on these bones. Now, because the production renderer doesn't need to export out of Blender, it never tracks any of the animation onto the bones itself. The bones are linked to the animation from the controllers themselves. And this provides a real problem when exporting, because you can animate this rig all you want, and when you export it and try load it into a game engine or you try load it into Vortals, Vortals won't see any of those animations because they haven't been exported into the file format. Which is why we have a completely different rig available for a game engine. Now, it's absolutely possible that you could get someone to write some code that translates all of this into the animation that you need. However, we don't have that, so this won't work. Now, if you look at the gaming rig, again, make sure you're in pose mode, you'll notice a couple of immediate differences. The first is that the arms are in forward kinematic motion. And one of the reasons for that is that we're going to be doing walk cycles. And in a walk cycle, we're swinging the arm via the parent. The child does not drive the motion of the arms. The second thing you'll notice is that this is the inverse kinematic control of the legs, and the legs are in inverse kinematic mode. But so take some time to work out the differences between the rig, where the main controllers are. So here, for example, the hip bone points down, whereas the spine bone points up. So to move the hips around, you have to select the bone that is pointing down. And you can see that from a production renderer or the production rig, that's a very different control system. It's very easy to find and select the hip. It's a lot harder on the gaming rig. Now, you've also been provided with the Judy rig from the film Zootopia, created by this person. I don't know their actual name, and it's been provided under Creative Commons. Now, this has been provided to you just so that you can get a sense of how someone else might approach setting up a rig. So you can see that the rig is slightly different while still having most of the same controllers. Now again, this is a pretty awesome rig, and if you go into pose mode, you can move things around and you can work out all the different types of controllers and how this has been set up. What you'll notice is that it's mostly the same, but there are some differences about how the types of things you can do and how you might want to approach all of that. So these have been provided to you just to have a play, and once you're familiar with this rig, we won't actually use this one, we'll only be using the Vincent one, but at least you'll get a sense of how someone else might approach rigging a character